Welcome back to GotWire. I'm Adam, and today I have this Gigabyte server here. It has two Intel Platinum 8259 CPUs in it with 48 cores total, 24 cores individual. It has 256 gigs of RAM in it, and it came with two 800 gig SSDs from Dell. Here's one of them. And they just come in their little drive caddies here, kind of like the Dell servers. And today, I'm going to be installing Proxmox on it using this USB flash drive here. That's why I got the keyboard and mouse hooked up here and the monitor, so I can install Proxmox on it. It does have a remote management port. I could do it through that, but I've never messed with that, and it's just easier to install it like this, because this is what I know, building gaming computers, so I'm going to do it that way. I'll mess with the remote management port a little bit later. I know Dell calls theirs like iDRAC. I'm not sure what Gigabyte calls theirs. But for networking, it comes with 3 gigabit Ethernet ports, but I want 10 gig. So I already slapped one of these in here. This is an SFP Plus 10 gig card, and it has 2 of them in case I want to pass through one of them to one of my virtual machines. And I also have 3 of these Dell 480 gig SSDs. I might just slap them in there so I can attach them to some virtual machines. I'm probably going to install Ubuntu server on one virtual machine and maybe mess around with Docker, trying to install Docker on the Ubuntu server, or see if I can just install Docker on a VM. This thing comes with 2 1200 watt 80 plus platinum power supplies, and these things are chunky, and they have a little strain relief here for the cord. You can lock it down so it doesn't accidentally get pulled out. So here in a minute I'll get this opened up and show you guys what it looks like on the inside. So the way you open it up is you just undo this screw here. There's a little tiny screw there, and then you press this button, you just slide it back and then take off the lid. Here's all 256 gigs of RAM. The SAS or SATA cables plug straight into the motherboard here. You got your 2 power supplies back here, and this is that 10 gig card that I already installed. And then you have another PCI Express slot there where you can install another half-height card. And then over here you have a full-size PCI Express slot card where you can install like a graphics card, but it's still a half-height bracket. You got your 2 CPUs under the heat sinks here. You got all your fans cooling everything off, and then up front here is where you have all your drive caddies, and you just hit this little yellow bar, take this tab and pull it out, and there's my other drive that it came with. And what I'm going to be installing Proxmox on is I just bought some cheap 120 gig SSDs, and I'm gonna mirror them and install Proxmox on these 2 cheap SSDs. So I'll get this all put back together and we'll turn it on, and I'll show you how to install Proxmox. These servers are very, very loud. This has been going on probably for about 2 minutes and it's still not turned on yet, but I'm sure you can hear it. I have the USB drive plugged into the front here with Proxmox on it. I got my drives lit up, and now we're just waiting for it to get into the BIOS. And you just hit delete here, just like any Gigabyte BIOS. It says delete there in the bottom left, and it's hard to see, but it says starting setup. So we'll just wait for that to load. And it has a pretty generic BIOS. It's not very fancy like the Gigabyte gaming BIOS, but we want to go to boot up here. I'm just using the arrow keys on my keyboard. And then for 1, we will switch that to my USB drive, Samsung flash drive. And then we just go over to save and exit, save changes and exit, yes. And it loaded into Proxmox. So you just hit enter for graphical, and then you just wait. Then you get your end user license. This is why it's good to have a mouse. You can just scroll down, and then in the bottom right, you just hit I agree. And then this is where you choose your drives down here. Target hard disk. It's kind of easy to overlook if you just keep on hitting next, next, next. I hit options, and then I'm gonna do a RAID 1, and then you just click on deselect all, and then I'm gonna choose my 2 drives here, the 119 and the 111, and then go over here to next, and then you choose your country, time zone, and then your keyboard layout. And then you just hit next. And then this is where you set a password for Proxmox, and you type in your email. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. I went ahead and hit next. And this is where you choose your network interface. Like I have a cable plugged into my 10 gig interface, and you can choose its IP address. You can make it static. So I'm gonna go ahead and set that up now. So I got everything set up. That's my subnet range for when I stick this in my rack in the data center. So that's what I'm gonna use. And then it lists all your interfaces right here here if you hit that arrow. So I'm just gonna hit next. So you can see my network here, and then automatically reboot after successful installation. So we'll go ahead and hit install, and then we're just gonna wait for it to install here. And then once it reboots, make sure you remove your boot media, and then we'll wait for it to come up here. I forgot to mention, since you set it to boot from that USB, I have all the other ones disabled, so I have to go back down here and go to boot, and then you want to use the hard disk drive, and then you just go up to save and exit, and then save changes and exit. And then in the top left, as you can see, that's the IP we set. So I'm gonna go to my other computer here and see if I can log in. All right, we got everything hooked up and configured. I had to change the IP to my house's local IP subnet, because if not, it had no internet access. I could get to it by changing my adapter settings to the 10.4.4 network, but temporarily it's just easier to change it to my house's network. So I set it to 192.168.4.8, and then it's :8006. And then I'm already logged in, but when you first get into here, you'll have to log in. I'll show you that here. This is what you'll see when you first go to this IP. The username is root, and then the password is what you made when you set up Proxmox. And then this always pops up. You don't have to pay for a subscription. You just said okay, and you can use Proxmox however you want. And this right here, your data center, and then whatever it says underneath, that's part of the installer. How you named your, I think it's the domain. Mine was PVE. I had to use ChatGPT and figure out how to change it back to Atom. You just do some commands in the command shell here. That's what this is, PVE down here behind my head. I don't know if you can see it, but it says PVE, and that's what these two red things are. But this is pretty much Proxmox. You get Atom, and then you get your shell here under data center. And then if you want to create a VM, it's up here in the top right. You just click on create VM, and to get your ISOs onto here, you just click on Atom, local Atom, and then go to ISO images, and then you can upload your ISO image, and you just select your ISO. Like this one here is a Proxmox ISO. I can click open, upload, and it'll upload it onto here. So you could have Proxmox running inside of Proxmox. I don't recommend that. So you just click on create VM here, and then you can name it whatever. Next, select your ISO, Proxmox. Next, give it default system. Disk, you can set however much you want to it. Next, and then you can do your CPU cores, 8 cores. Next, do your RAM. And then once you hit finish, it'll automatically create a VM over here underneath your name. In my case, I named mine my first name. So it's pretty fun to mess around with, especially once you get the VM started. Now I have 2 other drives. If you want to run like something like TrueNAS Scale, you have to pass those drives to the VM, which can be a pain in the butt. You have to go into the shell here and enter some commands. I found a video that helped me do it. So I'll try to link that video down in the description if you guys want to start like a VM of TrueNAS Scale. I'm also going to install a Ubuntu server VM on here and mess around with like Docker and stuff like that. So thanks for watching. This is just the start to my Proxmox journey. I already have one Dell R430 running Proxmox in the data center, and then this Gigabyte server will make 2. I got 2 Dell R630s for a pretty good deal, but they've been making me want to pull out my hair trying to get the operating system installed on them. I keep on running into errors. Like I tried to install Proxmox on them, and it said it could not detect any hard drives, even though there was hard drives. So I just bought a non-RAID controller for it, and I'm gonna try to see if that works. But once I get all 3 of those up, I'm gonna try to mess around with Proxmox cluster. And installing Proxmox is pretty easy, as you just saw. So I still need to do some more research on how a Proxmox cluster works and how to set it up. If they all have to be the same configuration, you know, the same size drives, or if they can be different, but that'll allow it. So if one of these goes down, the other one will take over and back up. But if you don't mind the noise and some of the proprietary software and BIOS, these servers are a really good deal, especially if you can find a good deal on eBay. After messing with the Dell servers, I really like these Gigabyte servers. They're real easy to set up, and they're pretty close to like Gigabyte gaming motherboards. But thanks for watching. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, so if you're not subscribed, I'd really appreciate it if you went down there and subscribed. That'd help me out. Leave me a comment, like the video, and I'll see you guys on the next one.